The following is a hockey podcast out of Vancouver and Surrey, British Columbia. It'll only consist of a lot of puck talk and even more BS, or in actual words, banter and satire. Enjoy, and as always, go Canucks go.
Trevor, we're about to lose our subscriptions to The Athletic, okay?
You're Locked On Canucks, your daily podcast on the Vancouver Canucks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
One more sleep until regular season hockey, baby. Welcome to another episode of Locked On Canucks. My name is Trevor Beggs, co-host of Locked On Canucks, and also Canucks writer currently with the Daily Hive, Vancouver. Before we dive into today's episode, we gotta thank you for tuning into Locked On Canucks because it is your Canucks every damn day. We're part of that Locked On Podcast Network. They're doing the most for sports fans across the world. And for our show, if you haven't done so already, make sure you go subscribe and like this video on YouTube, and on the podcast side, go follow us and leave a 5-star review. Oh, baby, because we're not here without you, and we're also not here without the sponsors. And today's episode is brought to you by none other than FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. You know what? Fans of their NHL teams, and the same here with the Vancouver Canucks, they tend to, overhype their own players. Is that the case with Miller and Pettersson? Because, some national pundits, some national writers, and we like to pick on the national guys a bit, they might not think as highly of Miller and Pettersson as we do here in Vancouver. So where do Miller and Pettersson truly rank among the best center duos in the NHL heading into the season? Let's get into that to kick off this episode of Locked On Canucks. We'll also touch on some trade targets revisited on defense with the Canucks roster now set and all the NHL rosters now set. And we'll also hopefully get to some of your comments as well. Because again, we ain't here without you listening to Locked On Canucks. Let's get into it now. But before we do that, let me introduce my co-host. He could play defense one day, maybe, in ball hockey. Kyle Bhawan, how you doing, brother?
Who knows, man? I know you did that and you won a championship, man. That's something else, man. Straight up. Not too familiar with the D, though. Not going to lie. Although, I went to your crib and I realized how small of a stick you were using when we were home alone. It's crazy. I couldn't believe it. That was something else. Anyways, I couldn't believe this. I couldn't believe there's a faction out there that ranked Pettersson and Miller as the 6th best center duo in hockey, because I feel as if there's a future in the immediacy, where they're like number 2, and that future is now. And I feel as if that future kind of has to be now, considering, JT Miller is, he's 31 and a half years old. Okay. We've been there. Me and Trevor are that age too. Life's different at this age. Okay. And who knows how many more prime years you have. And I feel as if JT Miller can be somewhat really, really good for a really, really long time, but there's a difference between being like 100-point good and, you know what I'm saying? And like potentially, I wouldn't say Selke good, but as good as JT Miller is right now or was last season, especially in the playoffs as well. Like, how good is he going to be at that standard and for how long? And a part of me is like, dude, we may have 12 more months of that or 24 months of that. So they got to capitalize again on having their number one center being JT Miller and not Elias Pettersson. And if both those guys, though, can play up to their potential, again, behind Draisaitl and McDavid, there's no center duo like Miller and Pettersson. Just the truth.
Yeah, and here's the interesting thing, and we're picking on the Athletic again today because they released a ranking of center duos across the NHL. And again, as Kyle mentioned, they had the Canucks having the 6th best center duo. Not just that, they were in tier 3, the 3rd tier of center duos. I think, again, Kyle, like you mentioned, there's an argument that Miller and Pettersson might be the 2nd best center duo in the NHL behind McDavid and Draisaitl. But here were the rankings from the Athletic. We'll go through the first 6. Tier 1 is an easy one. McDavid and Draisaitl, yeah, suck at Edmonton. You do got, on paper, the 2 best centers in the NHL. After that, in second, they had Austin Matthews and John Tavares. And then Colorado, Nathan McKinnon and Casey Middlestat. 4th, Alexander Barkov and Sam Bennett. And 5th, Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier. And then in 6th place, it was Elias Pettersson and JT Miller. And, for some of the the rationale behind the Canucks falling down the list, because at The Athletic, this article was done by none other than Harman Dial. And he initially did have
Whoa.
yep. Well, hear me out. Hear me out. He initially did have Pettersson and Miller higher up the list, and he mentions it in the article. But he said he ran this article by the other national writers or other team writers, and a lot of them questioned why Miller and Pettersson were so high. So he ended up dropping them down the list to tier 3, influenced by his peers. The West Coast bias.
Dude. Just have that West Coast bias.
The West Coast bias when you're as analytical as Harman.
You gotta have that West Coast bias. You have them higher up. You're man genius, not boy genius. Okay, come on, man. You don't have to ask the East Coast viewers of the game who literally watched maybe 13 Canuck games last season. I'm talking to the ones in April and May. You know what I'm saying? Harman, man, what you need that West Coast bias, bro? You should have ran that article by us. Unreal, dude. A little disappointed, not gonna lie. It is what it is, though. People can get in your head, and bro, people can get in the way. Like you talk about, like there's good names out there, right? And if you're not watching playoff hockey and you're just playing like EA Sports NHL 25, you're like, what? Like Barkov and Bennett? Like Barkov's really good, but no, that makes sense. That makes sense. Playoff performance is so important, and that team's been to 2 straight Stanley Cup Finals. I'm surprised they're not the second best center duo, to be honest. I was like, what, Matthews and Tavares? You know what I'm saying?
Was the one I had a big problem with. Was Matthews, Tavares, and Hughes and Hischier. Now Hughes and Hischier, again, great duo. But you also have guys in Miller and Pettersson who have both hit 100 points in their careers, who are both, pretty good, reliable defensive centers. And it's not like you have this big playoff track record with Hughes and Hischier either. So I would probably have Miller and Pettersson ahead of them. And I would have Miller and Pettersson ahead of Tavares and Austin Matthews as well. Because Tavares, I mean, he's still good defensively, but he dropped to 65 points last year. And everyone's talking about like, oh, he had a good year. He was good defensively. It's like Pettersson had a bad year and he still had, 25 more points than John Tavares? And yeah, I get Austin Matthews as a goal-scoring phenom, but I would still take the duo of Miller and Pettersson over Matthews and Tavares any day of the week. And the other two are interesting, right? Because you got McKinnon and Middlestat, and you have Barkov and Bennett. And Middlestat and Bennett are, I guess, at middle of the road second line centers, but it's interesting. You look at McKinnon and Middlestat, and their combined points last season, they had more points than Miller and Pettersson, and that's off the back of McKinnon having 140 points. So the two of them, I think they just slightly edge out Miller and Pettersson in terms of points overall. And then with Barkov and Bennett, and Harm mentioned in the article, they get a bump because of Bennett's playoff performance, right? Bennett's been close to a point a game in the playoffs, absolute physical force. And I get it, man. But again, for them to have Matthews and Tavares that high with, pretty much next to no success in the playoffs, come on, man. I'd rather Miller and Pettersson any day of the week over those guys.
Hey, man, it was Harman, man. Harman, man. Come on, dude. Man. Unreal, man. Unreal, man. I can't believe that, man. As Kurt Richardson is saying, man, you got to stand up for your opinion. And if you're wrong, you're wrong, but have conviction, a.k.a. have that West Coast bias, man. And you know what? You talk about, I think somebody just commented this too, and it makes me think about, again, JT Miller's importance and also his quote-unquote irrelevancy across the league, because, again, people are only watching the playoff games when it comes to the Canucks. Like, these guys are not everyone, we live in 2024, right? Everyone's like, oh, you need 8 hours of sleep. You need to take care of your mental health. You need to worry about yourself and not others, So these guys are not, like, in the East, they're not staying up at 10 or 11 to watch JT Miller play games. And was it Bluger? Bob Bluger talking about how JT Miller is a unicorn, right? Because he's a physical force too. He plays the game hard. He lays the body. Does John Tavares do that? How many playoff rounds has John Tavares won too? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you can't tell me that JT Miller is a worse hockey player than John Tavares. You can't. I'm not saying they did that in this comparison, but it's just one of those things that, again, irks me about Harman going to the East to get some feedback, man. Come on, dude. Come on. And you know it. I know Pettersson struggled, and recency bias is a thing, right? Pettersson struggled in the second half. He was bad for like 40 plus games. You throw in the playoffs, you're looking at like 50 games, right?
No, I'd say about 40. I think it was about 20. There was about 27 games there to end the season where he had like 6 goals and 17 points in 27 games, and he added 13 playoff games. So, yeah, I would say it was 40 games, a half a season where Pettersson wasn't good.
And I get why that would affect where the Canucks would be viewed when it comes to this type of conversation, right? The center of attention when it comes to the center position across the league and who has the best duos. But deep down, man, deep down, something tells me that Pettersson's going to wake up and JT Miller's not taking his foot off the pedal, like without, Father Time having something to say about it until a couple more years. Like these two are about to put on a show. We've mentioned it on the program so many times, and maybe this is the West Coast bias, or maybe it's just reality. Our fans over here on this side of the world and NHL fans across the league have not seen a Vancouver Canucks team where for a full 82-game season. And again, when Pettersson was on last year, I feel as if he was really, really on for like that January month where he looked like a superstar. When he was picking up points in the first half of the season, there still seemed as if something was a little wrong, like a contract was weighing on him, okay? Anyways, we haven't seen those two play at their best at the same time centering their own line for a full season. And I feel as if when they start doing that, and that will be this season, the Canucks, it changes. The culture changes. The respect across the league absolutely changes. And when somebody's talking about the Canucks on this side of the world, we're not going to be going over to the Eastern Hemisphere or whatever you call it. I don't even know if that's a thing to get some feedback on what our boys out west are doing.
Yeah, exactly. No, here's my kind of final comments here on Miller and Pettersson. I think Miller is disrespected and maybe underappreciated around the NHL, right? I still think even though he had 100 points last year, he is not seen as an elite center in the NHL by most casual fans or most pundits. Whereas Elias Pettersson, I think, probably gets too much vitriol here in Vancouver itself. And again, I think I'm super curious to see how he handles this season. Still battling that tendonitis, apparently. And again, it was a rough stretch, like a 40-game stretch. That's not insignificant where he was bad. Not just mediocre, but bad. So again, I've said it time and time again.
Lindholm was twice the player than Pettersson was in the playoffs. That's just the truth. That's exactly how bad Pettersson was.
Yeah. But again, I've said time and time again, everydayers know this. I believe in Petey not just to bounce back, but I think he's got that like 110-point potential. I think we can see Pettersson enter the Hart conversation. He has that kind of potential in his game. If he can get it all together, if he's right between the ears, if he spends enough time hanging out with Henrik and Daniel Sedin, and man, oh man, I mean, right now, I would probably have them as the third or fourth best center duo in the NHL. But they have the potential to be second, maybe even the first best center duo in the NHL. Let's go, baby. There's that kind of potential with Miller and Pettersson for your Vancouver Canucks.
They'll be able to get to number one if they win a cup. That's what it is. And let's see if that happens. Again, Pettersson has a lot to prove, as Bluger's alluding to right now as well. He said he talked to Brandon Batchelor, maybe on Brandon Batchelor's podcast. What's it called again? Oh, dude, I like that show too. It's with Randy Janda. Anyways, he's saying that Batchelor told him that he can worry about Pettersson if he starts off the season slow, right? If there's 2 weeks into the season and Pettersson still is like, I don't know, 3 points in 7 games, then start worrying. But I don't think that's going to happen. I really don't, man. Something is telling me that this is going to be the greatest Canucks season of all time, and it's because of what's happening at the center position. Yeah, we lost Lindholm, but we have Miller and Pettersson. What's going on here? This is incredible. And again, Miller, the unicorn. Miller was so incredible in the playoffs. Miller, yes, did come out and say, I don't need to put up 100 points. I can have 20 points less. I just want to be a more complete player. This guy's looking to evolve. Something's got to give. And this is it, man. It's going to be a magical season. It all starts tomorrow. And it's interesting how I feel as if you and I have barely kind of like hammered in on this subject because it's so fascinating. Like that, you need players down the middle. You need all that jazz. But man, oh man, how did we get to a point where in 2024 we have 2 legitimate number 1 centers? Like there's potential here for the Canucks to have 2 number 1 lines. Canucks, man, your team is stacked.
They're pretty stacked. And Chris Burgess in the comments saying Barzal and Horvat are also good center duos. Nah, enough of that Horvat love here. None of it on Locked On Canucks. I'll tell you that for free. Horvat and actually Brock Nelson were ranked as the Islanders centers because Barzal actually spent a lot of time on the wing with Horvat. And in the article, Harv's got that West Coast bias in this part saying that Bo Horvat is a below average number 1 center. Kyle, on the other side, let's switch from the C to the D, okay? Going alphabetically because now that the rosters have been set for the season, everyone's got their 23-man roster all good to go. let's revisit the trade targets on defense for your Vancouver Canucks. That's coming up on the other side after we shouted our friends over at FanDuel. Oh, yeah, you know the deal, baby. It's NHL season. It's NFL season. Hey, if you like that playoff baseball, it's MLB season. And you, whatever you're betting on, you can get a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the exact same page where you place those bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. And man, oh man, again, your Vancouver Canucks, if you're believing the hype, if you're believing that Miller and Pettersson are the second best center duo in the NHL, and that this team is going all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals, remember, your friends at FanDuel think the Vancouver Canucks have the 13th best odds of winning the Stanley Cup. I'm just saying the value is there if you believe in your Vancouver Canucks. Whether you're betting on the Canucks, NFL, MLB, whatever it is, make sure you go visit FanDuel.com.
Man, oh man, go Canucks, go, and we're winning the cup this year. I promise you. Man, oh man, Kyle Bound, Trevor Beggs, assuming the best. Having a morning full of West Coast bias. You ever smoked that West Coast bias? I'm telling you, that's the official strain of everything that Beggsy and Bhawan do when it comes to the Vancouver Canucks. That's the goal, man. Make one of those things. Okay, get into the business. Trevor, man, hockey starts tomorrow, and we just alluded to the West Coast bias and all that jazz, and we're over here hyping Pettersson and Miller up like they're Mario Lemieux and Wayne Gretzky, and we also have been mentioning the Canucks supposedly being in the conversation of being one of those teams that could win the Stanley Cup. Am I too high? Are you too high right now? Are we excited? Let rational speak, because I feel as if looking at this roster, there's still some holes, but we're letting the Stars carry the Trojan horse. Okay.
There isn't a single team in the NHL right now that doesn't have flaws, right? And every day, as I've mentioned that countless times throughout this offseason. The Edmonton Oilers have flaws. The Florida Panthers, who just won the Stanley Cup, have flaws. The Colorado Avalanche have some flaws. The Vancouver Canucks have some flaws. All of the contenders have flaws. So at the end of the day, it's how you overcome those flaws and what you do during the season to rectify those flaws. And that's why I did kind of want to revisit the potential trade targets on defense, because yes, that is the biggest flaw for your Vancouver Canucks. And not only is it the biggest flaw for the Vancouver Canucks, but you look at some of the other top contenders. I'd say it's the biggest flaw for the Edmonton Oilers. I'd say it's the biggest flaw for the Florida Panthers, who lost 2 of their top 4 guys in free agency as well. So again, every contender has its flaws, the Vancouver Canucks included, but there's a lot of reason to be high on this team, right? And again, we talked about the centers to kick off the show, and there's regression risk with Miller. There's concern about whether Pettersson is going to bounce back and be the same player he was. But again, I like Miller at least being at this elite level for one more season at the very least, and I certainly believe in Pettersson to bounce back. But it's no secret, Kyle, that the biggest flaw in this team is the defense, and that's why not only do we think, but we know that the Vancouver Canucks are going to upgrade their defense at some point this season.
Yeah, and I wonder who's going to be the lucky guy coming into Vancouver, and who's going to be the lucky. I wouldn't say lucky, actually. Who's going to be the unfortunate guy on his way out? There's a logjam there, and especially at the bottom part of this decor. Question marks are there, and you look at some of the moves the Canucks made over the weekend to assure that they could have as much cap space as possible when needing to make a move like this. And I know Trevor has a list in front of him, and it's going to be fascinating. And Alvin alluded to how a lot of future player movement, as always, has to come down to how the team is doing on the ice. Like, how many wins does the team have, how they're doing. They dictate everything. They dictate, ultimately, the trade calls happening. So it's ironic how on one side of the spectrum, it's like, oh, if the Canucks are struggling on defense, they're going to make a trade. On the other side, it's like, yo, if the Canucks are ripping it up, they're going to make a trade.
Yeah, 100%. And again, that's why Alvin and the company wanted that flexibility entering the season. They've got even some more long-term flexibility now with Höglander signed to a sweetheart deal. Again, just some fantastic work by the bald-headed beauties, Alvin and Rutherford, doing things for your Vancouver Canucks. Kyle, I wrote down a number of names here, just kind of going through the final rosters for the season. I'm going to look at division rivals first, okay? Because these trades always seem less likely. But then again, we saw the Vancouver Canucks deal twice with the Calgary Flames last season for their two big additions. So, I'm going to try to give out some new names because we've mentioned some names before. Obviously, Rasmus Anderson's name we've mentioned before. Let me point out two more on division rivals. And let's go to the Seattle Kraken, okay? Jamie Oleksiak, okay? Making $4.6 million for the next 2 years, left shot defenseman. He does have a 16-team no trade list. But you're telling me that if Jamie Oleksiak ends up on the trade block, say the Seattle Kraken are mediocre once again, and, they got some guys coming up on the left side. Riker Evans specifically comes to mind. They've added, they got Vince Dunn and Brandon Montour as their two top defensemen. Potentially, if the Kraken aren't going anywhere, could they trade a 31, going to be 32-year-old Jamie Oleksiak? And you can't tell me that he wouldn't be a preferred target for the Vancouver Canucks.
Oh, yeah. Guy looks like a basketball player. Perfect member of a potential decor for Tocchet, Adam Foote, and the Vancouver Canucks. I like that one, man. Keep it going.
All right, sounds good. Again, Jamie Oleksiak, not the most offensive stats last season. He had 3 goals and 17 points last season. But again, you're getting this guy for the brawn that he could bring during the playoffs. And again, going to have to move out some salary potentially, but it can be done for your Vancouver Canucks. The other division rival one I had was Braden McNabb at the Vegas Golden Knights. He's 33 right now. Vegas, again, according to national pundits, they still have the best defensive core in the league. But let's say things don't go according to plan in Vegas this season. They do have some depth on D. I consider putting Nick Hague on this list, but Nick Hague and Braden McNabb are both left shot defensemen. I assume that Vegas, if things don't go well, will decide to get rid of Braden McNabb, who is going to be an unrestricted free agent, and keep Nick Hague in the fold. But Braden McNabb, not as sexy as Jamie Oleksiak, but the dude's won a cup. He's got a lot of experience playing in a top 4 and one of the best defensive cores in the NHL. Could you see him in Vancouver Canucks, Kyle?
And, he has that physical nature to him, and we're, again, Forbort and Darren are there, and you talk about their physicality, but I feel as if McNabb's physicality and his ability to move around the ice kind of puts him closer to Zadorov when it comes to, again, being physical, whereas with Forbort and Darren, it's a different type of physicality that's mainly implemented through size and arm length, like that. Like I feel as if Darren and Forbort aren't lining up people for hits. It's kind of just around them. Anyways, continue.
All right, let's go to another divisional team, and I think these trades are potentially more likely because they're expected to be a bottom feeder, and it's the San Jose Sharks. Look, the San Jose Sharks have 2 guys on their left side who I think could be targets for the Vancouver Canucks. One name has been brought up time and time again because he's just on a bad team consistently, but it's Mario Ferraro. He's got 2 years left, paying him $3.25 million per season. Certainly overcast as a top pairing defenseman, but as a second or third pairing guy, I think he'd be a rock solid addition. And the other one is, and this might give Canuck fans the ick because he did the gritty against us, but it's Jake Wallman, who just signed in San Jose in the offseason. $3.4 million. Got traded. Sorry, my apologies. Making $3.4 million for the next 2 seasons. Had 12 goals last year. So the guy's got some scoring ability. I love the underlying statistics. I think Jake Wallman is actually one of the more underrated defensemen in the NHL. Kyle, do you see either of those guys being targets for the Vancouver Canucks?
I don't know. I thought you were going to say Cody Ceci, man. Anyways, continue.
All right, let's rip through some more physical guys. I'm gonna go with some physical younger guys who, I think might be familiar names with guys that we don't talk about as much. Alexander Romanov of the New York Islanders is a really interesting one to me because the New York Islanders are, again, the NHL's definition of mid. They have Alexander Romanov, who they paid a pretty hefty price for, right? They traded the 13th overall pick in the 2023 draft to get him. But you look at their team, and their cap situation is hellacious. Alexander Romanov's up for a new deal at the end of the season. They have so many guys signed long-term. They have other free agents to consider as well. I do wonder if maybe the Islanders aren't as good as people expect. If they fall to the race, do they consider trading a guy like Alexander Romanov, maybe recoup that first-round pick that they lost for him a couple of seasons ago?
First-round pick for Romanov. I don't know. I know it's the price you got to pay. Maybe you're looking at the data and the underlying. I'm obviously not watching the Islanders play games. You know what I'm saying? But that sounds kind of steep, man. That sounds kind of steep, man.
It would be a little steep based on the offensive production. But again, I think for a guy like that, you're going for the defensive ability, the hits and the blocks. And you got to consider that the Canucks first round pick is probably going to be like 28th, 29th overall. That's kind of what we're
32, buddy.
projecting
It's
for
going to
your
be 32.
32. Okay, there you go. All right, let me just fire quickly through some other names on the list that I have here. And Kyle, you can just pick any of them you want to talk about. Ivan Provorov in Columbus, 1 year left on his deal, paying him 4.75 Schmil. Oli Mott in Detroit, $3 million left, 1 year left on his deal. In Pittsburgh, you got Marcus Pettersson, 4.025 for 1 year. David Savard in Montreal, he's a right side guy, $3.5 million for 1 year. And a couple other younger guys in St. Louis. You got Martin Fehervary, 2.65 for 2 more years. The guy hits like a truck. And you have big Alexander Alexiev, would be more of a developmental Vincent Desharnais-like option. 1 year deal, paid $825,000.
Damn. Who was the? I'm blanking out. Who was the defenseman? Who was the guy that you mentioned before the last two?
Dave Savard, Montreal Canadiens.
No,
Marcus
right
Pettersson,
before.
Pittsburgh
There
Penguins.
you go, Marcus Pettersson with the Penguins, man. I haven't watched him play recently, but he seems to be someone that's like Carson Soucy-esque, just safe, can make a good first pass. You know what I'm saying? Obviously, Tocchet, I'm assuming, would know a little bit about him. Alvin Rutherford, obviously, as well. But a safe player like that who can just not create chaos around him and create efficiency for a team that's looking to be better off the rush and produce more offense. And it's not to say that Pettersson is like this offensive force. It's just, again, being able to make a breakout pass is going to be instrumental, straight up for this team taking the next level off offensively. And, I always bring up that play, but it's one of those things. Again, the Canucks lost Ian Cole and Nikita Zadorov. They lost Zadorov and they replaced him with Forbort and Desharnais. And I just feel as if Forbort and Desharnais are not making that pass that Nikita Zadorov made at the third period in game one when he launched that like 2,000-foot pass to Dakota Joshua, who dropped it off to Connor Garland. You know what I'm saying? Like, those types of plays are not happening with number 5 and number 6 on your team right now, and we need to fix that.
Yeah, I like you said, Kyle, I think Marcus Pettersson, last season played a career high 22.40 per game, almost became a number 1 defenseman there in Pittsburgh, even with Letang and Carlson on the roster. So Marcus Pettersson, again, a guy with familiarity for the organization, a cap that you can digest, and again, a familiarity with his management team. I think he could certainly be an option for the Vancouver Canucks if the Pittsburgh Penguins predictably fall out of the race. Let's cut to break here quickly. After I shouted our friends over at Locked On Senators, they're saying we are all Canucks again. Hey, every day know my wife is an Ottawa Sens fan, an Ottawa local. So the Sens, they're my adopted team. And good luck with your line of Matthew Highmore, Adam Gaudette, and Zach McEwen this season, guys. All the best to you over there. We'll be back on the other side. We'll be back on the other side of Locked On Canucks after we shouted our friends over at Indeed. All right, summer is over, baby. So put the Speedo away, put the man thong away, and go get off your rear end and find a job, okay? And if you're an employer, you need to use Indeed because they are your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data. And they got a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. So ditch that busy work and use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed, they just don't help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree that Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. One of the things I love about Indeed is I can relate to them because of my Vancouver Canucks. Again, one of the best damn teams in the NHL. If you're finding a job, you need to use one of the best damn platforms out there, and that is Indeed, okay? They leverage over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, and their matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Listeners of the show, you'll get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this very podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
People, we back doing this, and that's talking about your Vancouver Canucks, okay? Here on Locked On Canucks, here at the Don't Doze Art Lab, and here courtesy of Beggsy and Bhawan, okay? Talking a lot of ish. We're about to read a lot of comments, and dude, if you're watching this right now, you, do us a favor on YouTube. hit the like button, okay? Halloween is coming up. Got to hand out that candy to the kids. Straight up. You hit the like button here, you never know. Maybe Trevor and I will hand out full-size chocolate bars to the future. You know what I'm saying? That's it, man. That's the connection, baby. And bro, Trevor, maybe we need to like crack jokes for likes, you know, like do a little bit or something. Beggsy, what do you call a chicken staring at a piece of lettuce? Chicken sees a salad.
Should have got it. Should have got it. My bad.
Let's read some comments, man. Let's read some comments, Beggsy. What do you got?
All right. So I'm going to shout out Elston Gunn first, okay? Saying that it cannot be understated how important winning the first game of the season is. And
I love it.
It's funny because what did we talk about for the last few years of Vancouver? You got to start strong. You got to win that first game of the season. And hey, look at that. They won the first game against Edmonton 8-1 and went on to have one of the best regular seasons in franchise history. Now, the reason I bring it up is because you're not really hearing that talk right now about how the Canucks need to start strong. People are just believing that, you know, the beginning of the season doesn't matter. All that matters is March and April. Kyle, where's your stance on the importance of winning? No, maybe not that's the first game of the season, but at least starting strong over the first few games.
No, it's strong because, again, like we're gassing this team up. Stanley Cup contenders. Oh, Miller and Pettersson, the best 1-2 punch in franchise history, right below Draisaitl and McDavid when you're talking about the league-wide argument, blah, blah, blah. We're gassing this team up. Sheloffs can do it. Sheloffs can replace Demko. Hughes is going to get – we're talking about all this stuff, right? Hughes 100 points, blah, blah, blah. This team has been winning games for 12 seconds, 12 and a half seconds. You get what I'm saying? And they made a lot of changes to their decor. You know what I'm saying? Like, Tockett's been a really good coach for 1 year in this whole thing called being a head coach, a successful head coach, winning games. Dude, culture-wise, the Canucks in this organization, they're not contenders yet. You know what I'm saying? They're not perennial winners yet. So I think it'll be easier for this team to have that belief that they are legit if they get off to a good start. It's important. It really is. And it's just easier to get up. Like, you look at the whole Demko situation too, right? It's probably best if this team picks up wins early on.
Yeah, and especially with the goaltending tandem they have in net. Like, let's say if Shelovs and Lankinen look shaky to start, there's going to be a lot of questions about the long-term viability in Vancouver or Demko's long-term viability if this team doesn't start strong. And again, lots of questions with Elias Pettersson right now too, right? Like, the microphone is going to be on him and DeBrusk, especially when you look at the forward group in terms of how those guys can start their NHL seasons with, again, Pettersson and DeBrusk, both in Vancouver for the next combined 15 years together. That's up front. On defense,
I never thought about it like that. Those guys are going to be best pals, bro. I never.
They better be best pals, or else Vancouver's in trouble. Yeah. Let's touch quickly on D targets as well. Man, oh man. Okay, quick shout out to Bob Bluger, his lineup: Beggs, Bluger, and Bhawan. The triple B line, baby. Okay, we're making a B line to the big times. Let's go. Okay, some comments on defense as well. I've Kirk Richardson in the comments saying that maybe a D from St. Louis, not really seen as a playoff team. Is there anyone there we'd like? Also seeing comments from Callum Sandu saying go in and buy Trouba, sell the Farmers or season to win, and James Moore saying Shea Theodore from Aldergrove. Let me touch on all those three quickly. Shea Theodore from Aldergrove. Look, he is on an expiring contract, but I just have a very hard time seeing Vegas trading him away. In terms of Trouba, I mentioned him during the summer as a target for the Canucks, especially if there's some retained salary. He was in trade rumors for the Rangers. But I've seen the Amazon docuseries and Trouba's no trade clause and his love for being in the city. I just have a really hard time seeing Trouba leaving New York unless the organization absolutely pushes him out. But I do think they see some value in him. Then finally, the D from St. Louis. I think one of the most intriguing names that I didn't mention, because we talked about him quite a bit in the offseason, was Colton Parayko. If there's salary retained there, I'm really intrigued by Colton Parayko. Again, I think he's making $6.5 million for the next 5 seasons. That's a long time. If you can get St. Louis to retain even $1.5 million and you pay Colton Parayko $5 million a season, I really like him as your number 3 defenseman. I think he's someone who could comfortably slot into that role. Maybe not for 5 years, but probably the next 3 years and when the Canucks are in this cup window here.
More so than Zadorov, though, because that's pretty much the Zadorov deal. Straight up, man. That's different. Look at this. SK93, Cam Fowler will be a target.
Doesn't really fit what the Canucks are targeting on their defense.
It doesn't. And look at this. Infamous saying that Kyle's so critical on Vinny and Forbert, even though they haven't played one game yet. Yes, I know I'm emotional. I'm an idiot. I'm contradicting myself every episode. I don't know what to expect. I'm traumatized because of Lucas Spiza, okay? I see those defensemen. I'm reminded of Lucas Spiza. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to lie, bro. So, yeah, it is what it is. But you know what? Alvin Rutherford and company, it seems to be like they're hitting on 90% of their targets. Like they did swing and miss on Mikheyev and whatnot. And, you know, again, we'll bring it up, the Adam Foote thing. Maybe you can turn Vincent Desharnais into a young Adam Foote, okay? There you go. I'm wrong. It is what it is. But look at SK93, okay? We need one puck mover to work with these Giants. I think so. It would be a nice piece, okay? Just somebody who can make a clean pass. Okay, when I saw Forbert signing with Vancouver, I hopped online. You know what I saw? I saw Boston Bruins fans celebrating like they won the Stanley Cup. You think I'm joking? I'm not. They were so happy. When we signed Vincent Desharnais, a couple months later, we had Oilers fans in the building. You know how happy they were to not have to give Vincent Desharnais that much money in term? Dude, we gave him 2 years at $2 million per. You know how happy they were that we got him? Just do the math there, okay? Straight up. Anyways, Adam Foote can change them, okay? It is what it is. One more comment, though, before we get out of here, okay? Just one more. Who do we got? Okay, Kurt Richardson again. Embrace the heart. Embrace the heart, okay? Tomorrow, it all begins again. It's real time, okay? For today, I think what you got to do if you're a Canucks fan, right? You want to put that good voodoo out there. What did me and Beggsy do last year, okay? You know, we're talking about the Canucks need to get in shape. They got to do their thing. Prior to the season starting, what did me and Trevor do? We banged out 100 push-ups. We trained hard that summer. And now we're going into tomorrow, this season in general, and I want everyone listening to this or watching this to try their best in life. Go towards the heart. You know what I'm saying? Challenge yourself and level the F up. And you can do that by, again, you know, taking on your tasks that you have in front of me and doing your best. Even the hard ones, okay? Keep it hard 24/7, okay? For real, because one day it's not going to be hard. It's going to be soft all the time. You're going to wake up and it's going to be soft. And you're going to be like, why isn't it hard anymore? And you're like, you know what? It's because you didn't capitalize on all those hard times. My name's Kyle Bhawan, and I approve of that message. Hit the like button. It helps us out a lot, okay? Subscribe to the channel. That also helps us. One love to you and you and you and you and you and you. Tomorrow's going to be a lot of fun. Who knows what's going to happen tomorrow? Surprise, surprise, right? Beggsy and Bhawan. Who knows? One love to you and you, though. And take care, man. Take care. West Coast bias forever. Harmon, man, if you got to the end of the episode, just know that I'm a little disappointed in you, okay? Just a little. It's all good. You're the man genius. You could put me in a headlock, too, and probably choke me out, but I'm a little disappointed. Anyways, let's get out of here.
Oh, man, so much to touch on there, but I will just say that you heard it from Kyle Bhawan first. If you subscribe to Locked On Canucks and you become an everydayer, you will be hard 24/7. That's a scientifically proven fact. So shout out to the everydayers, the occasional listeners, the first-time listeners, the new subscribers, and those of you who join us on the live show on YouTube. It don't matter where you're listening, when you're listening. We appreciate the hell out of each and every one of you for tuning in to Locked On Canucks. Oh, baby, speaking of being hard 24/7, you know I'm going to be hard tomorrow when we preview the first game of the season, the big things to watch, the lineups, the battle against the Calgary Flamers. We'll get it done for you tomorrow here on Locked On Canucks. But for now, we got to get out of here. I'm Trevor Beggs. That guy's Kyle Bhawan. And you've been listening to Locked On Canucks.
Peace, one love. Go Canucks, go.